interest of time, we are 1 minute past 5. I'd like to thank each and every one of you that has joined our webinar. The topic is road safety. And before we get into the main program around the introduction and the welcome, I'd like to just make a few comments with regard to how we're starting this conversation and why it is important that we are talking about this. Firstly, it's an integrated, as you will see in terms of our partners, it's an integrated approach to road safety that we are looking at. Simply put, none of us have all the right answers towards how do we deal with road safety by way of improving road safety on our roads. Now, what has happened historically and has brought us to this point essentially starts from a very high road fatality rate in the country. Roughly around 650 people die daily from road crashes around Africa, and with South Africa contributing significantly to that number. The second thing is the economic cost of crashes is up to 3% of our GDP at the moment. The second issue is vulnerable road users that are at risk. And these are related to non-motorized transport users such as pedestrians, cyclists, and the like. And they account for nearly half of the fatalities. The third thing is driver behavior and how do we deal with driver behavior and the enforcement of good driving behaviors. Now, these are questions that we are going to attempt to answer through the various contributions made by our presenters to come. Institutional and policy weaknesses is another item that will come up along the way. And also the post-crash cost and the response and the emergency care that is required from the country's perspective in order to deal with road crashes. So, in order to start the webinar, I'd like to introduce our South African, our president, Mr. TC Madikane, and Dr. Melusi Chwale, who will do the welcome and introduction. I hand over to you, Mr. Madikane.
Thank you, Program Director, Mr. Lachman, who's the Transportation Expert Group Leader for the Academy. We normally use this opportunity just to ensure that our participants are aware about the Academy. I'll just, as a part of the welcome, I'll just give you a brief background, the association between the ASSAf and the Academy of Engineering. The mission of South African Academy of Engineering is to promote the technological welfare of the nation by marshalling the knowledge and insights of eminent members of South African engineering profession, elected by their peers to be a source of expert advice on matters pertaining to global competitiveness and the quality of life for the nation. Today's topic, it talks to the quality of life for the nation. Safety is one of the key aspects. The Academy of Engineering is a non-profit independent institution with 214 members. The Academy has its own constitution and it follows the model of the academies of engineering in many countries around the world. The Academy comprises of eminent engineers of all disciplines, related professionals with proven ability and achievement. The Academy of Engineering maintains relationship with overseas academies of engineering. And we joined CATES in 2009. CATES is the Council of Academies of Engineering and Technological Science. In September this year, we attended the 25th annual CATES conference with some of the ESCOM members. In April 2025, the South African Academy of Engineering signed a memorandum of understanding with the Academy of Science of South Africa, ASSAf, formalizing a strategic partnership to foster collaboration across science, engineering, and innovation. Colleagues, we can't afford to duplicate resources, and ASSAf and the Academy of Engineering, we took a strategic decision to say, let's maximize the resources that we have. And one of the key areas of collaboration is the co-hosting of events and dialogues on science and engineering topics. This joint webinar series is the result of this cooperation. I must say, gone are those days where individuals, they work in silos. You'll notice that today it's not only the Academy of Engineering, it's not only ASSAf, there is also collaboration with the Department of Transport. There is also collaboration with Black Business Council in the built environment, CPE. And then there's also collaboration with South African Institution of Civil Engineering, the Transport Division. Colleagues, welcome, and we're looking forward to the deliberations. Thank you, Program Director.
Program Director, can I go in?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. Colleagues, greetings to all. On behalf of the Academy of Science of South Africa, I really would like to express our sincere gratitude to all the co-hosting partners today, the South African Academy of Engineering, the Black Business Council in Built Environment, the Department of Transport, as well as the South African Institute of Civil Engineering. ASSAf is South Africa's official academy of science, which is meant to contribute its scientific expertise to the benefit of society. Now, road safety is amongst the key societal issues that we face today. Hence, this work strongly aligns with our service to society strategic objective. Road safety affects us all, regardless of our socioeconomic status, gender, age, and race, because to some extent, at any different time, we've all been affected by issues of road safety, whether be it the safety of our loved ones or the goods that support our livelihoods. So irregardless of inequality, which is so wide in South Africa, road safety is one of those that tends to cross-cut all facets of society. Our country's road safety status is a true reflection of what we term the polycrisis at ASSAf. This is affected by a multitude of drivers from different perspectives and sectors, be it governance at the rule of law or the performance of our economy, which somehow dictates the pace at which we can maintain our roads and improve our systems, be it climate change, specifically the frequency and the intensity of rainfall events, as well as extreme heat events, which have left a negative footprint in our road safety. Thus, indicating that our road planning systems need to adapt to a changing climate landscape. I can mention many of these factors that affect our road safety. However, I would like to put to the fore the role of society in improving road safety, whereas collectively, as road users, we can play a meaningful role to improve our society. This is an aspect through which the Academy of Science of South Africa is really eager to actually contribute in this discussion, which has got a lot of institutions from different perspectives that are actually contributing to today's discussion. We need to also explore, not only from an engineering, a systems planning perspective, how we can improve our society's role to improve road safety. On that note, Program Director, I would really like to thank the organizers, everyone, as well as the speakers who are participating today, and the audience for taking their time to attend this event. And we look forward to a very meaningful discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Twala. It was very good words that you have shared with us. It is a good and Mr. Marikane. Thank you for your welcome. We are doing well for time, and thank you for that as well. I'd like to jump right into it at the moment and get to the next item, which is really around the National Road Safety Strategy 2016 to 2030. There's a review that was done and the stakeholder consultation that was done. The speaker who has kindly joined us today is from the Department of Transport, and she's the road safety officer. Her name is Mrs. Samukaliswe Zulu, and I'd like to give her the opportunity now to share that review with us so that it will set the tone and the platform for the discussions to come thereafter. Thank you, and may I hand you over, Ms. Zulu.
Thank you very much, Vishal, and to the colleagues in the platform, and good afternoon. Like you have indicated, my name is Samukaliswe Zulu. I'm from the Department of Transport, working there as a Road Safety Programs Director in the Directorate of Road Safety. We were tasked by the Minister, like you have indicated in your introductory remarks and the previous speakers, that the rate at which road fatalities are increasing in our country is alarming, and road safety is affecting all corners of life and society. And we all know the devastating effects of road safety in our society. Therefore, I would like to share with you what we have covered as part of the review of the National Road Safety Strategy. And I must indicate that the review is still underway. It's not yet complete. And the people that were tasked to do the review of the strategy were the Department of Transport as well as the road transport entities that you see in the screen right now. So at the moment, they are busy with the consultations of the stakeholders as well as finalizing all the inputs that they are soliciting. So I must indicate that I'm very grateful and I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with the Academy today and other role players, and to acknowledge that really road safety is a shared responsibility and it's very complex. Not one institution or not government alone can win the battle of road safety. So I'll be taking you through roughly what we have covered in as far as the review process is concerned and what we have proposed as the review team. And then I will be very brief because most of the items that are in this presentation, you are all aware of them and they have already been covered and some are still going to be covered in the next presentations. So without any waste of time, I would like to reiterate on the fact that South Africa, as we all know, faces one of the highest road fatality rates globally, with significant social and economic consequences. Therefore, we are aiming to say the National Road Safety Strategy should be the central policy tool to reduce road crashes, injuries, and deaths. And therefore, we also acknowledge that we are aligned with the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety and the National Development Plan, where we are aiming that we should reduce the road fatalities by 50% by the year 2020. So this goal needs to be achieved in a manner in which we will be implementing our strategy, because as you all know, it's no use to have a strategy, but if we don't know how to implement it, it becomes a challenge. So the key findings that were highlighted during the review of the strategy are the challenges that we all see now, to say road crash data has got its limitations, although we do have road crash data, but there are limitations which need to be addressed so that we can inform the interventions that we need to implement to improve our road safety situation. We also noticed that there's limited local government involvement in all sectors where we were consulting. There was an outcry to say we are not reaching out to all the areas of the society. There's also fragmentation in governance and coordination. There's inadequate law enforcement and less investment in technology that can assist to improve road safety. There's also infrastructure deficits at provincial and local level, fragmented funding allocations and deficiencies towards road safety, as well as corruption, which is compromising law enforcement efforts in every way in which we are trying to improve road safety. And lastly, we acknowledge that there is insufficient road safety education and awareness at schools and communities. So these are some of the key findings that we noted to say they are bringing about what we regard as not enabling us to be able to achieve the targets that we have set for ourselves as a country. And we learned some lessons along the way that we need to have a strong central oversight for performance and monitoring. We need to have mandated fatality reduction targets for provinces, and we need a cultural shift of road safety ownership across the government, private sector, and the civil society. Also, we need institutionalized, sustained stakeholder engagement and coordination mechanisms. In other words, we are alluding to the key findings that we have identified, and we know that these are the lessons that we can learn from them. Stats is telling us what we know, and we know all the what, the where, the when, and the how. But the big question is, what are we doing about it? Because we acknowledge that we have a problem as a country wherein stats is telling us on average 32 people are killed daily on our roads, and this is a cost to the economy. And most of these people that perish on our roads are pedestrians and passengers. The numbers are there, but we cannot just say it's the numbers. This is the people that we know, our relatives, our brothers and sisters. And we know that the vehicle factors account for a certain percentage, wherein of that percentage, 54% is attributable to the tires, which burst before the crash. And then where the road is the cause of the crash, the poor road surface is always cited as a major contributor. And the people that are mostly affected is the young people. So when you have these statistics in mind, then you begin to ask yourself, what are you doing about it? Or what interventions are you going to be targeting these statistics? This is the target that was set for the country during the United Nations Global, Decade of Action for Road Safety, which started in 2011 to 2020, but we could not achieve the set target. And it was extended from 2021 up to 2030. If you can look at the year in which we are in at the moment, let's take the 2024 statistics, because that is what we have currently, where the yellow line is showing the number of people, the fatalities, which was 12,172. And when you look at the green line, that is the line which is indicating the levels at which we should aim towards reducing our crashes towards 2030, of which by the year 2030, we should be having at least 6,982 fatalities. But I must indicate, colleagues, that due to us not achieving the desired targets, as you can see, we had to increase the target per annum, which was initially 600, and then it increased because the number of fatalities increased in 2024. So it increased from 600 to 865 per annum as a reduction. So at a glance, when we reviewed the strategy, we are aiming for the 50% reduction, like I have indicated. And unfortunately, we only have 4 years to achieve this because 2025 is gone. So whatever that we will be planning to implement as a revision, it should take place or kickstart in 2026 up to 2029. I don't even want to mention 2030 because that will be the time where we'll be rolling up and wrapping everything. So we believe that in the reviewed strategy, a three-pronged strategic approach should be adopted where we look at all the systems that are in place, which is number one, the safe system model, which we always advocate for. And we are advocating for the designs for human error and limit injury severity. So in other words, we cannot just advocate for a safe system approach when all other systems are not in place. And we also take into consideration that social model is important, where we acknowledge the broad ownership of road safety across the society. And this is one of the platforms that we are engaging right now, where we acknowledge that the society is playing a very huge role in road safety. And we can never do any interventions without being driven by data or evidence. So we need that data that has got predictive insights and that will provide about high impact interventions for us. Then quickly, these are the phases in which we are aiming to staggerly implement the interventions that are in the revised or reviewed strategy, and not being forgetful that we are guided by the global plan for the Decade of Action for Road Safety 2021 to 2030. We are trying as much as we can as a country to align ourselves to this global plan. And then when we unpack it, we realize that we need a strategic shift from being reactive to proactive. Most of the interventions that we have been implementing all along, they were reactive and fragmented. But we believe that if we can shift towards a proactive technology type enabled data-driven approach, there are so many items that we can dwell on, and I'm still going to indicate to you that will help us to be proactive and be able to respond to the crisis. So the key stakeholders and role players that we need to partner with and collaborate with, the list is endless because road safety is really a shared and everybody's responsibility. We align ourselves to the 5 pillars of the safe system approach as they appear in the Decade of Action. That is Pillar 1, road safety management, Pillar 2, safer roads and mobility, Pillar 3, safer vehicles, Pillar 4, safer road users, and Pillar 5, which is post-crash response. So in each of these pillars, we just summarize at a very high level as to what needs to be reviewed and to be implemented. And I must indicate, colleagues, that some of these interventions that we proposed, they cannot be implemented within the remaining period of 2026 up to 2029. However, we can initiate and push for them to be implemented so that we know that we are moving towards the right direction. But with the road safety management, we know that technology can assist us in playing a huge role, and we know that corruption needs to be fought through anti-bribery management systems. We know that there should be legislative reforms that must take place, and I must indicate that further details and thorough information about what will be achieved is contained in the Word document or the draft of the reviewed National Road Safety Strategy. Also, we need to set those annual fatality reduction targets, and we need to develop the National Road Crash Database and also uniform employment conditions so that we can reduce the corruption. So for Pillar 2, we advocate for safer roads, where we need to identify and remedy all the hazardous locations, and then we prioritize non-motorized transport infrastructure and the universal access. We implement road maintenance models using updated designs. We need to embed road safety audits in all infrastructure projects. And we also acknowledge that capacity could be an issue for some of the authorities. Then pillar 3, the safer vehicles. We know that there are vehicle testing stations that are responsible for the roadworthiness tests, and we also acknowledge the periodic testing of all vehicles, more especially the commercial and scholar transport vehicles, as well as to ensure that there is strict roadworthiness checks so that we can promote the roadside inspections, tire safety, and in-vehicle safety technologies. Also, we can adopt the new car assessment program, aligned safety standards. And I must indicate, colleagues, once again, that some of these interventions are in a long term, and it appears smoothly in the implementation plan where we can see which ones are short, medium, and long term. In terms of the safer road users, the national road safety campaigns, which are robust and aggressive, need to be enhanced and need to be in place and include all the communities that we engage, civil society groups, through partnerships and collaborations, because if we combine all our resources, we can make an impact. And then in the school curriculum already, there are talks towards making sure that the life orientation includes road safety. It's in place, but it's not yet implemented. The technology used for safer speeds, training and awareness, we need to prioritize youth, women, and people with disabilities. There has been talks and talks about all of these interventions, but the most important thing is to get them being implemented through the platforms like this and collaborations with the wider society. Still on the safer road users, we are all concerned about our driver testing and licensing system, which need reforms, and there are interventions that are in place to review our K53 and to regulate the driving schools so that the type of drivers that we produce, we know that they are not hazardous to the other road users. We need also to look into the smart deployment of traffic policing and intelligence-led prosecutions, where we also check how do we deploy the traffic officers in a manner that will address high-risk areas during the high peak periods. Also, we need to enforce laws that are targeted at education and awareness campaigns. Also, being mindful of speed as an issue, the restraints, drink driving, distracted driving, pedestrian safety, all these violations, they need the dedicated campaigns and the education and awareness. Also, we can also tap into the research if we collaborate with partners like the academy and other research institutions to check on the behavioral economics research that targets high risk groups. The last pillar is post-crash response, wherein we look at the use of technology for real-time coordination after the crash to make sure that road incident management systems, the central communication centers function effectively. And also we are pushing for the single emergency number across all areas in South Africa so that it will be easier to be reaching the post-crash assistance. Also, we need to clarify crash scene roles across the South African Police Services, EMS, Metropolis, and traffic units, and also improve the incident data quality and sharing. Also, we need to enhance the RAF model for accessible compensation, and the long-term view is also to empower traffic officers with crash investigation authority so that we can get the crashes, offenses being prioritized. So in terms of monitoring, evaluation, and reporting of the reviewed strategy, there is a proposal to establish a national crash Road Crash Database Hub, which will be led by the Road Traffic Management Corporation, because they are the lead agency in road safety and they are the entity of the Department of Transport. We also need to use real-time dashboard with geographical information systems integration to improve on the information that we get and acquire for our data. And then during 2028, we need to conduct a midterm review to check if all the interventions that have been proposed are yielding any results or not, because part of the reason why we are reviewing the strategy is because it is not yielding the results that it is supposed to yield. And we can also host annual stakeholder forums and provincial performance clinics. There are risks that are involved, and we have come up with the mitigation strategies to make sure that these risks are not going to impede on the implementation of the road safety strategy. So these are the risks that have been highlighted. And then we also have got the mitigation strategies for each of the risks. And then going forward, we believe that we need to establish coordinating structure at all levels. We need to make sure that people are accountable and they are able to report, and we have the plans that will allow the annual reports, the reviews, and the end-term evaluation. In terms of funding, we proposed a dedicated treasury budget for road safety and also to establish the road safety fund. More talks can be centered around how are we going to establish the road safety fund, but it's a proposal that is worth to take note of. Also to tap into public-private partnerships so that there can be more funding also from the corporate social responsibility contributions, as well as considering international donor and development funding opportunities. In conclusion, we believe that if all these interventions that are proposed here, we can assist to drive down the number of fatalities in our country, and we need to address the previous implementation gaps and also to continue to rope in the civil society organizations, private sector, academia, research institution, and many other societal people that have got a vested interest and that are key to solving road safety problems. That brings me to the end of my presentation, and I will welcome the inputs that I can get from the colleagues in the platform, because we really need to incorporate them and make sure that we produce something that will be practicable, implementable within the period that we have. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ms. Zulu. I think you raised very, very significant items as part of the strategy. In addition to lives that are priceless, we also have a 200 billion price tag on road safety or the lack thereof. Within that, we'll need to work out a plan of how we reduce that number in accordance with that goal that you have, that we have. I would like to say it's our goal for 2030, because we all have a vested interest in reducing fatalities on the road. So thank you very much for your contributions. The questions will be coming through on the chat line, and when we have the Q&A, we will start to have more detailed discussions around some of the concepts that you have presented on. Segueing nicely into that, I think what Andrew will be talking about will assist us perhaps in some of the pillars that you speak about. So let's welcome Mr. Andrew van Grooting. He's going to talk about road safety considerations at a conceptual design stage. He's from the SANRAL Technical Excellence Academy. He's a senior mentor known for technical excellence in the academy, and is from the South African National Roads Agency Limited. So let me hand over to Mr. Andrew van Grooting to take us through his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. And you can obviously hear me. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the background to my colleague at DOT earlier. So what I'm going to talk about is, and I'm going to make it really brief, it's probably 15 slides, is just some road safety considerations at concept design stage. It's a very complex topic, so I'm not sure that my little slideshow is going to do it justice, but let's connect, let's chat, let's do Q&A. So just some background about SANRAL. So obviously you all know that SANRAL delivers road infrastructure. We've got a network of about 27,500 kilometers that needs to be maintained and expanded. And just to give you some background of what happens outside of our, let's call it the normal jobs that we do there, we've got clusters. So we've got a planning and design cluster, we've got a materials, construction and maintenance cluster, statutory control, operations, finance, corporate services and governance. And within our Technical Excellence Academy, which is the graduate program for civil engineering, we play a role in 1 and 2, a little bit in 3, but mostly 1 and 2. So if I were to take those same clusters and just expand them into focus groups, the relevant focus groups that are, or let's say the most relevant focus groups that would deal with safe road designs would be the ones I've emboldened over there. And obviously, the two that start with road safety, the engineering and the education and awareness, while they do function as separate focus groups, I think we had our first combined one a couple of months ago. It's obviously very important. We deal with a very complex national road landscape in South Africa, highly varied, dangerous, and as designers of hard infrastructure, we have to consider a lot more than just the design manuals. We have to look at the context, and it's actually, in my opinion, it's a pretty good training ground for graduate engineers to not just apply manuals, but to apply their mind to very human factors. And then what's happening in the background in terms of research and development. So COTO publish or have published over the years in their various previous names, 60 plus manuals, that what we call the technical recommendations for highways and the technical methods for highways. And most of these need to be updated, and that's part of a very much necessary research program. We've got some of our graduates involved in this, as let's call it candidate researchers. So that's also quite a nice facet of their early careers, is that they can get involved in this kind of work. So just in terms of our Technical Excellence Academy, it's obviously people, and it's at any one time, it's probably 50 to 55, sometimes even more graduates in the program. They're all given 5 years to essentially put together a portfolio for ASSAF and become registered. Not everyone does it in under 5 years. I'd say probably count on one hand those who have done it in under 5 years. You have to be ambitious. You got to put in the long hours. You also got to be in an enabling environment. But that's just the human landscape of our Technical Excellence Academy. And I'm very heartened to see that 2 of the 22 in design secondment, that's that sort of light peach color, are actually on this call. So welcome to Zippo and Puti. It's nice to have you guys here. Just in the top left-hand corner before I move on, sorry, that's the bulk of our work happens in the northern part of the Eastern Cape, which is very, very interesting landscape. Land is allocated by traditional authority. There doesn't seem to be too much integration of land use and transport planning. And if there's one takeaway I'd like us to have after this session, it's that road safety engineering is not an afterthought. It's got to happen early on, and that's why I thought the title of my talk had to relate to concept design. Thank you. So just to tie in with what Samu was talking about, I would say that the pillar 2 is probably most relevant to the title of my short talk today. Integrating and highlighted, the highlighted element there is probably spells it out quite well. Safety considerations from initial planning and design. That's where we try to get our heads around the problem as design teams and put together some kind of a report where we pick up road safety engineering aspects that simply can't go unaddressed. So if I were to just jot down some of the factors that come into play when we are at the concept design stage, which, as I said before, it's where the hard thinking needs to happen. Just some things that some of you might not have thought about. So in our Technical Excellence Academy, our in-house designs in the main deal with capital improvement projects. So the road's already there. Very little new road design. The road's there, the people are there, the settlements are there, and all the hazards are there as well. So our graduates they get dropped in the real world, and they need to devise solutions to complex problems. As I said earlier, land use and transport planning often are simply not happening in harmony or happening at all. Number 3 there, functional road classification. Yes, one does have national maps of risks, classes of road. Often the hierarchy going from one order to the next, as the textbooks would suggest it should happen, isn't necessarily the case. The northern part of the Eastern Cape's very, the terrain is quite rolling to mountainous. Access management is a massive part of what our graduates do at concept design stage. You'll find on any particular segment of road dozens, if not hundreds, of uncontrolled, illegal, informal, whatever you want to call them, accesses onto class 1 and 2 national roads. Non-motorized transport, huge issue. Schools, lack of sidewalks, lack of separation between motorized and non-motorized. And then the moment one leaves the main drag, you get onto a secondary road network that you could argue is class 5 or even lower gravel roads. So while we look at the road reserve itself, a lot of our work is actually the broader corridor, including settlements close to the road. And then item 7, how do we treat roadsides? I think if there's one thing hopefully our young engineers take away, is that you're not just designing what's between the road edges, but actually what's outside the road edges, between the road edges and the fences. And then I'm just going to show some really random slides of the things that we come up with in the focus groups, but also as a result of us being immersed in picking up these projects from our, let's call it our internal clients. We develop typical details that we like to get out into the design fraternity out there, or the design consulting engineers that do the work. Some cross sections we develop that might look fairly unconventional, but have been implemented successfully on some of our routes. The clear zone concept, very much part of what the new TMH 24 is about. 2 examples. On the left-hand side, you've got the N2 dual carriageway freeway. Used to be called the PE bypass, but now it's both plays the role of long-distance mobility as well as some kind of an urban freeway. So what you see on the left is a fairly substantial concrete column that will house the freeway management system infrastructure on top. And the lady who drives the Jeep did some analysis of using the NetSafe model and the RAPSA Excel-based spreadsheet that comes with TMH24. Did an analysis on all these poles and came up with some very interesting safety or road safety economics. The right-hand side is the treacherous Olifantskop Pass, which handles about 1,500 heavy dual-articulated manganese ore tippers coming from the Northern Cape down to the two ports in Nelson Mandela Bay. So some roadside safety issues. I think we'll all agree that guardrail that's there will probably stop some vehicles, but not all. So we've done the analysis on that one as well. Just something I found personally to be pretty useful is to keep some overseas literature handy. I think this is probably not the latest edition, but it was quite useful, and we tried to obviously encourage our graduates to read far and wide. And I think my last slide is, here's another slide. Sorry about the detail, folks, those who aren't design engineers. But things like, for example, how much space does a guardrail need behind itself to actually perform its function? And next time you're driving down the road, have a look at the guardrail and what's behind it and ask yourself, well, if a substantial vehicle were to hit it, would it be able to act the way it should act to bring the vehicle back? And then I'll finish off with a little spreadsheet, just one extract of what we call the risk assessment procedure for South Africa, which is an add-on to TMH24. And I'll leave it at that. I think the questions and answers will be a lot more interesting than me taking you through a whole lot of slides. And please make contact if you'd like to know a bit more about what we're doing in the road safety engineering space, and also just in the internal design space at SANRAL. Thanks, Vishal.
Thank you for that presentation, Andrew. It was, as much as it might have seemed a bit rushed, but it did connect quite significantly, in my opinion, with what was shared by Ms. Zulu. Especially on the data side, you introduced new concepts around the design and how that would work. And you spoke about research as well, which is what she also alluded to. So the need for research perhaps is something what the Academy and ASSAf are probably good at. So there might be something to talk about after this call.
Sure.
But moving on, we are running we're about 5 minutes late on our webinar at the moment. But moving on very swiftly is to talk about the South African road safety in context. And this could be an interesting one in terms of what that context would be. Mr. Lemu Onyatsi, who's a manager of road safety engineering at RTMC, will now make a presentation around what that concept is. So I'd like to just quickly hand over to Lemo. Please proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. Am I audible?
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I've been asked to provide an overview of road safety in South Africa. However, I think I'd also like to briefly extend the discussion to the SADC region, and I think in a few instances the broader African continent. I think the recent cross-border crashes, including the tragic bus accident that we saw a couple of days ago in Limpopo, are a stark reminder that road safety challenges and their solutions often extend beyond our national borders. So this is just briefly the outline. So despite different national contexts, some of these challenges are commonly across the continent. And addressing them often requires that we have an integrated safe system approach that is not isolated. So I'll start just briefly going through an overview of the African continent. As you can see, there's enough literature, there's enough stats to suggest that Africa is disproportionately affected by road fatalities, despite having only about 3% of all global vehicles. And if you look at road injuries, those are the leading cause of deaths, particularly between the ages of 5 to 29. And going back to the Limpopo road tragedy again, it shows just how, you know, a single crash can ripple through families. If you look at the people that were part of that crash or that were involved, those are breadwinners, you know, from different communities and different countries. So again, in the context of Africa, crashes cost about 3 to 5% of our GDP, which is really an immense and preventable cost if you look at it. And again, the bus crash in Limpopo, like many others, really highlight the human and economic cost of crashes. Secondly, maybe just to touch on common challenges across the African continent. Obviously, there are different, each country has its own set of challenges, but there are a number of common challenges that we have, you know, so despite different national contexts, there are challenges that are quite common. So if you look at things like your limited institutional coordination, I think ASSAf spoke about something like that we're working on using the National Road Safety Strategy. Another common challenge is your weak crash data and underreporting. It starts again with your the mechanisms that you have in collecting crash data. So if you don't have proper mechanisms in place, it affects your the storage of your data as well as the reporting of that data. Poor road maintenance, it cuts across different countries, or you know, mostly the entire continent. Of course, South Africa is much better compared to you know, our sister countries for a number of reasons, including the fact that the size of the economy and the resources are different. So if you look at what the World Bank categorizes or classifies South Africa, they say we are an upper middle income country. I think there's probably 2 other countries that are in the same level as South Africa. So again, the issue of resources, but again, low compliance with speeds. This applies mostly to countries like South Africa, where you know, there's bigger roads, there's better roads, but again, the policy and legislative framework that's there, including the road user behavior, doesn't talk to you know, safe practices. There's also the issue of inadequate post-crash emergency care. ASSAf touched on that. So maybe just to delve a bit into the trends again, but using regions. So in Southern Africa, generally, you have the issue of speed. Again, it talks to the fact that there's, you know, enough infrastructure. There's more highways in the south, and a couple of other countries in the, you know, your Arab countries as well. So then inadvertently, then you get to have higher speeds. So the issue of pedestrian safety is again a challenge. Most of your East African as well as your West African countries have an issue with motorcycle crashes and also mixed traffic. But particularly the West, they have an issue of limited data. And I think these are some of the issues that came up or came out in Marrakech about a year ago. North Africa, again, because they have quite a number of highways like we do in the south, the issue of vehicle safety and speeds remains a challenge. Perhaps maybe then dealing with or zooming into the South African context as an overview. So you would see there, I just depicted our crash fatalities in the past 3 years from the year 2022 So in the calendar year, or from 2023 to 2022, there was a decline or a decrease, but then we've since seen an increase of about 2.45 in 2024. So it means there's more work that really needs to be done. But again, if you look at the data that we have, it shows that there's a persistent high fatality rate, and pedestrians remain vulnerable. The fatalities hover, at around just over 40%. So again, pedestrians are disproportionately affected by road-related fatalities. Another key risk factor is your speed, alcohol usage, driving at night, particularly under inclement weather conditions. And then if you factor in, your risky driving behavior, then it exacerbates that issue. Again, if you look at where most of your crashes are concentrated, it's mostly on your N1, your N3, and your N4 corridors. That's where most of your traffic gets routed. And maybe just to again zoom into some of the road safety, specific indicators. So South Africa, we are seeing a gradual but steady decline. If you look at the fatalities that we have per 100,000 people, the picture changes a bit if you juxtapose this against the vehicles per 100,000 people. But I think generally, if you look at 100,000 people, we are seeing a steady and although gradual decline. In terms of the fatalities per province, this comes from the 2024, the latest State of Road Safety report that was published by the RTMC. So the three provinces that are affected most in terms of fatalities remain Gauteng, KZN, and the Eastern Cape. But again, these three provinces account for about half or just over half of all the vehicles. So if you juxtapose the fatalities against vehicle ownership, it then tells a different picture in terms of or asking if are these three provinces disproportionately affected or not. That's when now you start seeing provinces like the Western Cape now being disproportionately or relatively disproportionately affected over and above Gauteng and KZN, for an example. Again, in terms of distribution of per road users, it's again pedestrians, passengers again, if you look at public transport. So I think the indicators that I'm showing now on the screen also help when we work with the National Road Safety Strategy to say this is where our interventions are supposed to focus or give priority, given that it's mostly pedestrians that are mostly affected. Now, Sisam has touched on the key framework that we use in countering road crashes or in advancing the topic of road safety in the form of the National Road Safety Strategy. But I thought maybe I should also include this slide just to say, yes, we do have a number of entities, including different stakeholders as well. But the RTMC, as the lead agency, has the responsibility to lead that implementation of the National Road Safety Strategy. We all know that the RTMC is an entity of the Department of Transport, and this was formulated in 1999 in line with the provisions of the Constitution through the RTMC Act. So again, the intention was to pool powers and resources to eliminate fragmentation of responsibilities in road traffic management across different spheres of government. So one of the things that RTMC is responsible for is to manage crash information system and NATIS integration, and a few other things that include your black spot mapping. At this point in time, the only black spot mapping that's done due to how data is collected is black spot mapping that involves fatal crashes. But again, as we enhance, like Sisamu has alluded to, the intention to enhance our crash database, we'll then start mapping non-fatal crashes as well, because those actually constitute most. I think something like over 90% of our crashes are, I think it's 97, 98% of our crashes are non-fatal crashes. So there is a need for us to then look at collecting non-fatal crashes so that our interventions can be informed. The RTMC is also coordinating different committees, including the National Road Safety Steering Committee and its forums. That last bullet that I made there was to ask the question of regulatory powers. So at the moment, the RTMC doesn't have regulatory functions when it comes to road safety engineering. So the question of when and why, because I'll make an example. Regulatory authority will allow the RTMC to set binding standards and to better coordinate enforcement, and be able to, when needed, hold stakeholders accountable. And I think maybe lastly, they'll also allow us to monitor, inspect, and enforce compliance. I'll make an example just before I move to the next slide. If municipalities fail to implement road safety audits, the RTMC can then intervene through regulatory measures. The next slide, ladies and gentlemen, is about lessons. And this is not only specific or unique or applicable to South Africa. I think most of the lessons are applicable at a continental scale. So there's a need for us to centralize crash data systems. Again, in South Africa, we also have fragmented data, particularly non-fatal crashes or non-fatal crash data. We need to institutionalize the safe system approach. It needs to be entrenched in the society. We need to strengthen engineering capacity and audits. I'm happy that ASSAA is working on something that's going to also help us to strengthen this engineering capacity, particularly professionalization of road safety audits. Integrate safety into design. I think Andrew has touched on that. Cross-sector coordination, Sisamu has touched on that. Funding for road safety, Sisamu has touched on that. And not only funding, ladies and gentlemen, we also need to ring fence. There are measures in place currently to try and ring fence part of these funds, such as with your provincial road maintenance grant through the Division of the Revenue Act. There are ways to sort of ring fence, but we need to strengthen those because at the moment there's not enough consequence management. And we also need to evaluate this implementation. This is inherent within the safe system approach that you need to evaluate. That is why there's so much data that needs to be collected. And I think in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I think our biggest lesson is that the road safety must be planned, number one. It shouldn't be policed after the fact. Engineering and enforcement must work hand in hand. Every crash is preventable. If we design our systems to expect mistakes and protect lives, Africa's roads can be transformed one intervention at a time. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Lemo. You also suggested the theme of data. I see it's becoming a common theme amongst all of our speakers. And thank you very much for your presentation. It also shows the effort that is being put in by many of the stakeholders already towards road safety, and we are looking forward to supporting and making sure that our roads become safer with more contributions towards those various pillars that we spoke about. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Moving on, To the next speaker from Limpopo. We're going to talk about the Limpopo Province Road Safety Plan and the applications. That will be done by the Senior Manager of Planning at the Roads Agency Limpopo, Ms. Matabo Masagala. So I would like to please hand over to you to take us through your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, I will be touching on the road safety strategy and assessment that were done in the Limpopo province, and also focus more deeply on the IREP methodology that was applied. I just want to check, is my slide visible and am I audible?
Yes, on both.
All right. So the Limpopo road safety plan and strategy. The Limpopo Road Safety Plan is the implementation of the 2025 to 2035 Limpopo Road Safety Strategy, which is formed in a way that aligns with the National Road Safety Strategy, the United Nations Decade of Action, and the African Union Road Safety Charter. This plan, the strategy was introduced in December 2024. And we're looking at having a vision zero for Limpopo, where we're saying that in the long term, we would want to have 0 fatalities and serious injuries within the province. But in the short term, we're looking at reducing the occurrence of fatalities and serious injuries by 28% by the year 2030 and by 50% by the year 2035. The strategy and the plan are aligned with the safe system approach, where we are acknowledging that people by nature will make mistakes and that physically we're very vulnerable to injuries in cases of crashes. And we're saying that should people make mistakes, the road conditions, the vehicle conditions, and the speed at which the drivers will be driving should be such that they prevent any serious injuries or fatalities. However, should that fail, the response from the post-crash care should be efficient enough to reduce further fatalities. The strategy itself also follows, as mentioned, the safe system approach, but we've turned it into 7 turning points that include the 5 pillars of the safe system approach that looks at safer vehicles, safer speeds, safer roads, post-crash care, safer people. But we've included the shared accountability because we understand that for us to reach the vision zero that we are aiming for, the province has to work collaboratively amongst different stakeholders, from health, from education, from transport, and the agencies within the province. And we also focus on data and the evidence of the actions that we will be putting through as part of the plan. So the focus of the presentation is mainly on the safer road pillar, looking at the infrastructure portion of it. The need for the safety assessment arose from the awareness that Limpopo province has been experiencing quite extensive accidents and fatalities over the years. We're looking at about 1,000 fatalities between the years 2019 and 2024, which is quite a huge number. And just to indicate some of the accidents that have occurred on some of our high risk zones, we have a recent accident that occurred where around 13 lives were lost on the R81 near Rasekopa. We've also had the bus accident where that Lemo alluded to, where we've lost 43 lives. And the other one is the Botswana road accident that occurred in 2024, the bus from Botswana on its way to the ZCC. So we're saying that we're also noting that there are quite high accident zones and corridors that we have in the province, such as the N1, R71, R37, and quite a number of them that I have not mentioned. But beyond this, we also realize that as a province that we do have to implement this strategy, as it is a provision of the Department of the Division of Revenue Act and stipulated in the Department of Transport practice notes. And we've looked at network level screenings using 2 different methods, and we've included the results in our road safety module as part of the road asset management system. The methodology that we followed, we have the South African Road Safety Manual that we've done as part of the REMS project, and this was done through JG Africa and Apani joint venture. It spanned 3 years between 2021 and 2023, and it looked at 2,563 kilometers, which then amount to the entire provincial strategic network of the Limpopo province. However, my focus is going to be on the ARAP methodology, which formed part of the Limpopo Road Safety Program that was headed by Impact Catalyst and the Anglo-American. The assessors in that case were the ARB systems, and the project or the assessment lasted 4 months in 2024. And in that case, we were able to cover 1,000 kilometers, which included portions of the strategic provincial network, plus some standard roads. And I must indicate that there are some inspections that were also done in this financial year. The ARAP methodology aligned with the objectives that we wanted to achieve as a province, to have a network and a project level safety assessment tool where we have a deeper understanding of high-risk road sections, and also to know what countermeasures as a province we could implement to create safer conditions for all road users. We would like to support risk and evidence-based planning, and the methodology, the ARAP methodology, was very instrumental in leading us to towards that goal of evidence-based planning. Just a brief overview of the ARAP methodology. The process starts with road inspections, and then there is coding that is done, and then there's a beta program that is used to then assess what impact do different countermeasures make on the safety ratings that we've had as at the base case. So we use a survey vehicle that has to be accredited with IRAP, and the accreditation requirements are then included in the IRAP survey manual. And once we've collected the data, we then go and quote the data, where we look at the road videos that we have, and then we start quoting based on attributes that we're seeing and identifying on both the driver side and also the passenger side of the vehicles. And these attributes that we are coding will then lead us to a safety rating that we get, and through the star rating demonstrator. And the wonderful thing about the ARAP methodology is that when you get the star rating, it focuses on different road users. So we will have a rating for vehicle occupants, we will have a rating for motorcyclists, we will have a rating for pedestrians, and also a rating for cyclists. So you will know that the measures that you have to put will have to cater for all road users. Just an indication, the least safest road will have a rating of 1, and the highest rating that could be allocated is 5, and that will indicate the safest road possible. And a movement from an improvement of 1 star in safety rating could amount to approximately halving of the death and serious injuries that could have occurred should the rating be 1 lower incrementally. This is just an indication so that you can have an overview of what different ratings look like. So on the left-hand side, we have the R528 that you can see that the road is in poor condition. The side distance is very poor as well. And the road, from the analysis that we've done, received a rating of 1. And we also have the R518, where it received a rating of 3 based on the conditions of that section of road. As part of the results, what then we did, we looked at the overall kilometers that were assessed, and the output of it indicated that the network is fairly unsafe, with around 63% of vehicle occupants being rated 1 to 2 stars, and 90% of pedestrians between 1 and 2 stars, and 69% for motorcyclists. So what then happened is that as the beta program was used to check the impact that different countermeasures would make in reducing or increasing the safety rating of various roads. So the VIDA method, the VIDA platform is part of the ASSAf methodology. Is a software that we use where we can then see if we were to implement certain countermeasures to remedy the defects that we've seen on roads, what will be the improvement in the ratings. And once we've done that, it indicated that the occupants rated 1 to 2 actually reduced it from 63 to 33%. However, for pedestrian, it was still it was not that much of an improvement for pedestrian. But I would also want you to note that most of the roads that we had assessed are high order roads, and there were not a lot of pedestrians there. But we're also noting that where there were pedestrians, the safety ratings there were quite low. This is just an indication of the before and after. We've modeled the different countermeasures, and in essence, the output was that we could avoid 1,180 deaths by implementing those countermeasures. The impact and the outcome of the methodology, the ASSAf methodology that we followed, led us to having an evidence-based planning where we have a better understanding of what happens on our network via the risk mapping that was done. And with a better understanding of what happens on a network, we then have informed information on how to allocate resources in improving our road conditions. And that has been integrated, and certain parts of it are still going to be integrated in the provincial planning tools. The improved safety outcomes, they're still ongoing. The program it's also still ongoing until it will be completed sometime this year. So the impact of the measures will only be known at a later stage, where we would like to know what would be the reduction in the high-risk zones and the crash data that we would have collected. Hence, it is very important to then keep track of the data and improve the data capturing system. What it has done as well is that the assessment have fed into the Limpopo Province Road Safety Plan and Strategy by means of bringing an understanding of the second pillar of the safe system approach, the safe infrastructure, and then it allows us to see how we integrate with other pillars and other departments within the province. What has also occurred is that we had institutional and stakeholder benefits where local engineers and planners were trained on the ASSAf methodology, and there was quite a high cross-sector collaboration where the province currently has strengthened its partnership between various departments such as transport, police, health, local municipalities, the agencies, because we collectively came to produce the plan and the strategy itself. And it also leads to greater accountability for the Limpopo province, where we would reach a place of transparency where we have measurable safety targets introduced. And these safety targets are also included in the road safety plan, and the targets dates are also included there. So for your reference, if you want to go through the document. What we're saying is that the ASSAf methodology has allowed us to have a simplified approach in understanding our road network from a safety perspective. And it has given us planners a clear rating system, which has made it easier for us to be able to identify and prioritize life-saving upgrades and countermeasures. The road safety plan is moving Limpopo province towards an evidence-based planning where we don't just focus on just user demand planning, but we look at evidence-based planning to ensure that every investment that we make toward our infrastructure has a measurable safety return. We are not just building roads, but we are designing safe system to protect all road users, including the most vulnerable road users. And it is for this reason where we are seeing the province shifting from a passive response to a proactive approach in dealing with road safety. And that is seen with how we deal with the infrastructure part of it, but also through the collaboration with the different stakeholders within the province. Just to acknowledge a few of of the companies that were involved in the program, but there is a lot more departments that were also part of drafting of the strategy and the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Masakela. Thank you. It was very enlightening to see how far you've come from the agency side in terms of understanding the problem at hand. I think the IRAP was enlightening for all of us to see how you've collected the data and sort of getting on top of it, so to speak, with your with the stakeholders, in addition to the others that have been mentioned already. So thank you very much for your presentation. I'd like to now move to the next item, which is our last presenter, which is going to be done by Dr. Karin Venter. She's from the CSR and is a senior researcher there, who's going to give us an overview of the CSR initiatives and the Road Safety Lab. So I'd like to hand over to Dr. Venter, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Vishal, can you hear me first of all, and can you see me?
Yes, if you could put it into slide presentation mode, then we will.
We had that problem earlier. Better.
Yes.
Okay. Perfectly like. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karin Venter, and I'm a senior researcher at the CSAA. And I will be giving you an overview of the role that the CSAA Smart Mobility Transport Safety Lab can play in road safety and transport safety as a whole in the future. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the introduction. I think that has been very well conceptualized. So I'm going to give you an overview of the CSAA Transport Safety Lab, the current road safety focus areas, and the new frontiers that we are crossing. And then I'm going to talk about the way forward. So first of all, I think both Lemu and SAMU contextualized the burden of disease, the fact that road safety is a public health problem. It's costing, Vishal, you mentioned that it's costing our country billions of rands. It's money that we can better invest in poverty, in food schemes, even in infrastructure. So the rest of the speakers, Andrew and Matabu, have contextualized the infrastructure aspects and what infrastructure improvements can mean. But the biggest contributor to crashes in South Africa is still human factors. And we are a long way from understanding how to address human factors effectively to actually reduce crashes. More concerning is the fact that road crashes is killing our working population. It's our young people, our economic active people that are dying because of road traffic crashes. And I mean, that has social and economic implications going forward for child-headed households, for education. So understanding this problem is really, really critical to facilitate behavior change. And you'll see that I added there, and conflict. So it's not only about reducing crashes. Currently, we only collect data and we report to the UN on our fatality data. But what we need to, in future, be investing in is actually understanding the conflicts and where the conflict points for serious crashes on our road network is. So the challenges that were identified, it's basically the fact that there is not enough scientific research to inform interventions, road safety interventions. Behavior change in general is slow. We need to understand human factors but much better in order to influence policy and program design. And then we cannot loosen the human factor from the infrastructure or the land use planning. All of the different elements have an impact on behavior, and behavior has an impact on how we plan and design our road environments. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the CSAA Smart Mobility. And as you can see there, the intent is to be very forward-looking going forward. However, it's not something that fell out of the sky. There's actually a long history to the establishment of this Transport Safety Lab going back as far to 2012. However, in 2017, the CSIR launched or reorganized, and Project Synapse was conceptualized to coincide with the fourth industrial revolution. The whole road safety crisis was acknowledged by the CSIR, and this informed the conceptualization of this Transport Safety Lab as a national asset to start doing evidence-based transport safety research. There's been a lot of to's and fro's, and we've had a lot of lessons learned. It's been a steep journey, but in 2024, the minister launched the CSIR Transport Lab officially, and you'll see that we're now in our toddler stages. We literally started with this on the 14th of October last year. So if you think about the gaps that I just identified, the CSIR Transport Safety Lab intend to bridge those gaps. Again, data is a big concern. How do we collect the data? How do we centralize the data? Each and every one of the speakers before me have highlighted the need for data, and I want to emphasize that it's not only crash data that we eventually need to consolidate, but it's also our infrastructure data, our road asset management system data, the road incident management system data. Everything needs to get to come together to in 5 or 10 or 20 years' time to actually inform how we design our safe system. Then human factor analysis, that is one of the biggest reasons for the establishment of the Transport Safety Lab. Understanding human factors. For very long, we've neglected, and I think it's a difficult topic if you think of the K53 and how learner drivers are being taught to drive. It's a difficult topic. It's human behavior is difficult, but we need to start somewhere. Then to test interventions, evaluating infrastructure interventions, possibly minimum standards for vehicles, anything that has to do with road safety, and I'll say a little bit about that on our demonstration projects. Then as a science institution, obviously we invest in innovation. We bridge that gap between the universities and basic research and further research, which is one of the mandates of the CSIR. And then something which has not come out very strongly tonight is the need for monitoring and evaluation of these interventions. So again, just very quickly, the Transport Safety Lab objectives is to collect local data. It needs to be evidence-based. It needs to be data-driven. And the intent is to develop guidelines that's applicable to South African and African context, and that we can develop our own local solutions, not only borrow from overseas. Yes, we can work with the lessons learned, but we need to develop our own solutions for our project, for our problems. Then the research focus and how we intend to bridge all these new frontiers. Again, data is essential. So we're moving in terms of our methodologies from traditional methodologies that we all know, the way in which we conduct surveys, in which we did observational studies, traffic counts, speed surveys, things like that. We're moving to simulated environments and naturalistic driving studies, where we have invested in the equipment to do these human factor studies from a naturalistic driving perspective, which entails an understanding of not only the driver, but also of the environment and the vehicle, and how all of those behavior work together to create safety or unsafety. The simulator, we currently on a learning curve with the simulator and working very hard to simulate South African conditions and South African environments that can be tested. Then moving towards big data analytics, again, mapping where is our problem areas on our road network, or in terms of behavior. Imagine that you are able to supplement Matabo's data on the road network with having a very thorough understanding of the type of road user behavior that is your target audience, how old they are, and what their behavior is. So the research focus areas of the Transport Safety Lab, again, human factors, but human factors do not exist in isolation. We need to understand the road infrastructure, and that influences some recommendations in terms of traffic and road safety engineering. Vehicle safety technology, Samu mentioned that that's a big focus of the reviewed National Road Safety Strategy. And I think as South Africa, we've been lacking with our own NCAP requirements, and what do we allow into South Africa and what don't we allow into South Africa. Then connected and intelligent transport systems. Everything these days are smart, but really moving towards understanding how human factors interconnect with things like vehicle-to-vehicle communication, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, and then again, the role that data and analytics of data can play in prediction models, identifying high-risk locations, and really mapping risk on the road network. So we're currently busy with quite a few initiatives, development research projects, and I would like to say that we are, as the technology that we've been investing in is from overseas, so there's a really big drive from the CSIR side to localize the technologies for South African conditions. And then something which also normally lags behind is the fact that we cannot do this research and we do not have a data platform. So since the inception of the Transport Safety Lab in 2018, the CSIR has invested in the development of this data platform that collects all of this sensor data from different sensors. So whether it's from the vehicle, whether it's from instrumented dummies, all of that information is collected on a central data platform, which is hosted under the Center for High Performance Computing at the CSIR. And all of that data types and data streams are now needed to be linked, and that they can make sense going forward. So I'm quickly going to go through this. This is a demonstration project that we're currently busy with, driver perception of fluorescent yellow-green signage. That's something that we see more and more often in our construction zones, and as you can see, it's quite effective. However, initially the intent was to reserve the colors for areas where vulnerable road users are at high risk. So currently the research is looking at that, and we started with, or the team started with a very basic survey around the CSIR. However, they're now working in partnership with SAAE to identify areas and to identify the impact of these FYS signs on the municipal road network. Traffic conflicts, as I indicated earlier, yes, we need to bring down our fatal crashes. However, we need to understand where the conflicts are and the potential for or the increase in risk on our road network. Delivery motorcycles, naturalistic driving study focusing on the behavior of these motorcycle drivers. The baseline study was completed last year, and we will now be instrumenting some of these vehicles going forward to not only understand their behavior and the human factors and the things that influence them, but also understand what's going on around them. Is the intersections really designed for these small little motorcycles to traverse in the way that they do, and what is other road user behaviors around them? Then restraint systems, last year and this year again. Tomorrow we're on our way to Eastern. We have the privilege to participate in a crash test that's facilitated by accident specialists and the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Last year we looked at the barriers, the typical barriers that's installed next to the road and what happens to those in a crash. This year, following research that we conducted in tandem with the RTMC, we will be looking at harsh braking events from different types of vehicles, and we will test the impact or the ability of seatbelts to actually restrain the occupants of the vehicles in the event of these crashes. Then we're involved in things like the new energy vehicles, the RIMS, where we're assisting the National Technical Committee with guidelines for first responders, because currently our first responders really lack the knowledge and the know-how to respond to these new energy vehicles. So we are busy positioning ourselves strategically. We are making a lot of research advancements in terms of the type of research that we're doing and automating a lot of the functions, investing a lot in infrastructure, and we are slowly but surely starting to influence policy and frameworks. So the way forward, again, as I indicated, the intent is to be a national facility that can contribute to evidence-based policies, that we are able to inform through the research criteria for minimum criteria for safer vehicles and environments, that we are able to contribute to behavioral and education campaigns and awareness campaigns. I think that's one thing that we need to distinguish, is the fact that education and awareness is not quite the same. The one is long-term and the other one is short-term focused. Then modeling risk, modeling and mapping the risk on our road network, and the development of risk models for target audiences in terms of age groups, types of road users, and so forth. Continuing with the crash simulations and investigations, and then targeted interventions for the user groups in the areas. We are not able to do any of this on our own, and we are incredibly thankful for the partners that we had on this journey, and the list is growing exponentially. There is such a huge need, and each and every one of the previous speakers also indicated that there's a need for collaboration, and that we need to work across the traditional boundaries to actually make a difference, and that is slowly starting to happen. One of the ways in which we do it is through, for example, the Engineering for Safe System Forum, which in 2 weeks' time, we will have a Safe System Masterclass with the Eastern Cape Department of Transport. And this will be a very practical session with really esteemed new and older speakers. Andrew spoke about the involvement of the TEA in a lot of these assessment and infrastructures, and there's really so much potential for these young people to embed road safety in their careers going forward. Then lastly, I think we want to be a national facility that makes an impact. We need to be impact driven. However, we see ourselves as collaborative. With that, I'm going to conclude, and I'm going to say that the past is written, but the future is left for us to write. And I think that is so important, because everything that we currently report on, fatalities and fatal crashes, is history. We cannot we're not able to change that. What we can do is to really take an action orientated approach through this, through the National Road Safety Strategy Review, transforming the what's needed into actions through public and private partnerships, creating the mechanisms to enable those partnerships across departments and across government and private sector to actually make a difference. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Karim. Much appreciated. What I picked up from your presentation predominantly is the focus on behaviors and societal behaviors. And the second item I picked up is the focus on youth. I think it was also mentioned previously that they are the most exposed from a youth point of view. And thirdly, that if we continue on this trajectory, it is starting to compromise social sustainability in the country. So thank you very much for that. We have now come to the sort of the end of our presentations. I'd like to please ask all of our attendees if you can please give us some latitude to probably complete at 7 p.m. We are running slightly late, and it might be that the Q&A session runs a bit longer than we have planned. So please indulge. I'd like to start with some of the questions that have been posed already. Perhaps with you, Ms. Zulu, there's a question posed on, should there be a single entity that's the custodian of road safety, in the country? We see many stakeholders working like yourselves, Karim, and our other stakeholders working, tirelessly to address road safety. The comment is, should there be a single entity responsible for road safety? I'd like to start with perhaps Ms. Zulu, because she's sort of the custodian of the rules of the game, I would say, in terms of policy, governance, etc. What would your comment be on that question, Ms. Zulu?
Thank you very much, Vishal. It can never be a single entity, never, because road safety is an epidemic. It's affecting the whole society. It's like an infectious disease, and we need to really promote a safety culture. We need to make road safety a lifestyle, and we need to create responsible citizens. We normally say it takes a village to raise a child. So if road safety is that widespreadly affecting everyone, it can never be the role of a single agency or a single entity. That is the reason why we are gathered here, to collaborate and to brainstorm and to see what works, what doesn't work, how can we go forward. And I acknowledge that we have been having these talk shows, talk shops, and the implementation is not forthcoming on some of the interventions. However, that should not stop us from continuing, because we know what needs to be done. So we need to collaborate. The little resources that we have, if we can put all our efforts together, we can make a huge impact and we can make a difference. So I'm just trying to answer in short to say it can never be a single, and never in a lifetime. All of us gathered here and everyone else that we can think of, let's rope them in. Let's work together and fight against this epidemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zulu. That's exactly why we were having this webinar, to see how we could all make positive contributions towards road safety. So thank you for your comment. I think you also addressed the comment and question from John Sampson. John, are you sufficiently rewarded by that answer? It sounds like you're not happy about the movement in terms of implementation. I think we all agree that we are all unhappy about it. So I think from that point of view, I would consider your comment and your question answered. If not, you're welcome to please ask or please say so. One theme that came through continuously from every every presenter was the concept of data, the collection of information that's reliable. To some extent, we can see that at a high level, we probably have some information around that. But I'd like to put this perhaps to Karim, perhaps working with intelligence and AI and the like. What do you think would be the role of of artificial intelligence in helping us gather the data, analyze it, and give us information that's meaningful that we could help the cause of improving road safety? Karim?
Thanks, Vishal. I think there's already a national drive to actually enable the collection of this data. And again, if you look at how quickly and how far the vehicle technologies are actually advanced in relation to our policies and our data collection methods, I think there's a we need to very quickly catch up with the technology that's already there. But like I say, there is from a national drive to actually collect data, not only when the crashes or the conflicts occur, but to identify errant behavior and to intelligently make use of that information to map out hotspots and to do predictive analysis. Thanks. I hope
No,
that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was about to mention that there's technology coming from the OEMs as well, which is helping perhaps on the car side. I'm not sure about heavy vehicles, but being able to stop a vehicle without seeing that there's an obstacle in the road, where the technology is able to help also keep vehicles on the lane. These things are already in some of the vehicles that we drive today. So thanks for that. I think we've also answered the question on engineering and the design standards that came through very nicely from Andrew. So I would consider that question answered without wanting to go back to that. The behavioral change, I think that one is perhaps a bigger issue. Colleagues, I don't want to pick on any single person, but this affects all of us. The behaviors that we all exhibit on the road as a collective on this call, as well as others on the road. How do us as having a vested interest in improving road safety, what can be done to deal with the behavioral issues that Karin mentioned? Because that seems to be the big item in terms of if we as individuals, as citizens of the country, take road safety seriously, we might lessen the effort that many of us are having to put towards road safety. So I'd like to open it up to perhaps anyone on the call right now. What are your views on behavioral changes that are necessary? Because in my mind, from a facilitator point of view, that doesn't cost money. Changing one's behavior is actually for free. So it's a choice that we would make as we sit in a vehicle and take to a road. Yeah, so I'd like to ask if anyone is willing to take that one on, because I think that seems to be a material issue. From what I could see from Karin, from her findings, it's around 80% is related to behaviors. What would any one of us would like to contribute towards that?
I can take it.
Thank you, Lema.
All right. I think at a very fundamental level, behavior can be due to lack of information, or information is processed, or unwillingness, or not being inclined to comply, right? Or a culture that has been perpetuated for some time. So my thinking then is to how do you undo it? I wouldn't say there's just one different way that one can use. So which is why you then have this carrot and stick approach, where the understanding is that interventions are not mutually exclusive. So the education and awareness part of your interventions is not mutually exclusive to the enforcement part of your intervention. So you enforce so that you enforce as a deterrent to what has been maybe, let's say for instance, a perpetuated culture or not being inclined to comply with the rules. But at the same time, you then keep on intensifying your education and awareness campaigns. Thanks.
Thank you, Lemo. In terms of the next set of questions, I believe that to some extent we have answered. How can collaboration between academia, professional bodies, like the ones that are gathered on this call, and government be strengthened to create a sustainable national road safety knowledge base that informs both policy and practice? Do you agree that we have in a way, through the various presentations, actually dealt with answering that question? Mzulu has made it very clear in the first question on how we think we should go about it. So in my mind, I think as a facilitator, I'm happy that is already sort of in place. It's actually working. Webinars like this and conversations afterwards are all contributors towards sort of defragmenting the road safety narrative and coming together to collaborate. And that is why we have so many different stakeholders on the call today to listen to that narrative. So I think if I take my facilitator license, I think that question is also being covered. In terms of the next question, I'd like to pose that because I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing that probably all of the questions that we have asked for and that are spoken about, some are comments, relates, and the last one probably is the one that relates to what Marianne has mentioned, is calling the perfect roads are perfect. Marianne, I'm not an expert on what perfect is. I'm not even aware of the idea of perfection, but I assume you mean well-designed, good roads without any sort of design flaws and things like that, and the maintenance is probably up to scratch. So that would be sort of, in my mind, what would be close to definition of perfect. Second one is you mentioned that vehicles need to be perfect. In that sense, I suppose roadworthy, fully compliant with all of the requirements as per the OEM specifications, maintained, etc. So your comment is saying just looking at the indicators is not enough. The SSA would also recognizes that people make mistakes. So there are other indicators. Now, Marianne, I'm not sure if you want to share what those other indicators are for the benefit of the team, and then we can move to the next item. Marianne, you're welcome to contribute to those other indicators that perhaps are in addition to what we have spoken about already through the presentations. Is Marianne on the call? Okay. It doesn't sound like Marianne is on the call, or if she is, she's not able to speak. She says she cannot unmute. To the organizer, are we able to unmute Marianne, or is it difficult to do so?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can.
Ah,
Now, there
hi.
we go.
Thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak. Yeah, what I was trying to say, if we have, and perfect is of course a loaded word, but if we have very, very good roads and maintained roads and very, very good vehicles, then that number of 75, 80% that Corinne showed, that will go to 100% because there will always be mistakes that people make. So that's why indicating what is contributed by roads slash vehicles slash people is not really a good indicator. It's of course an important indicator, but it becomes a problematic indicator when the situation with regards to vehicles and roads becomes better. So therefore, we need to also look at other indicators. We need to look what the total pie is. And you're absolutely right, Vishal, that these type of conversations are important. And I think through these conversations and all the other things that happen, Southern African Transport Conference sessions, etc., we have been able to stabilize fatalities in this country, which I think, given that our mobility levels still go up, is a good thing.
No, thanks for that, Marianne. Thanks for that contribution. Okay, so moving forward, we are coming to the end of our webinar, and I'd like to give Dr. Herman Joubert the opportunity for closing remarks and a summary. So, Herman?
Thank you, Mr. Facilitator, Program Director. Yeah, I'll try to be brief because I think we've spent the best part of the time available. But to start to say is that the Department of Transport, in the road safety strategy that they have developed and revised and presented today, that really gives us a framework to address the issues. It has taken some time to get to where we are today, but it is a credible platform, credible framework, and it deserves the buy-in of everybody into that system. And the webinar has also illustrated that there is a general convergence towards road safety in the country, but now it comes to the implementation of that. Now, I just want to briefly refer to the three or four E's of road safety, and starting with education. Now, just an example of the ideal world. Currently, there's a lot of criticism on the minibus taxi industry. We have a situation where many South Africans do not have access to private vehicles. So their first exposure to driving is when they drive with their passengers in a minibus taxi. And it would really be wonderful if you could have a situation where the taxi drivers, who are all professional drivers, would behave in such a way that they can educate the young passengers into how you should actually comply with the rules of the roads. There are many education strategies, but I think that it is just the idea of what could happen if we buy into that safe system. Lots of things have been said about the engineering. You've mentioned the data. It's really a theme, and we must recognize that we are currently still on a paper-based system. In South Africa, we've seen the mere fact that we have a virtual meeting today, it was something that was almost unheard of a couple of years back. So really, it is not such a challenge to get into a digitalized accident reporting system, and where we can then address those issues. The barriers, I think it's a very important element. Next time there is on the television, a news item on these horrendous bus accidents, don't look at the vehicle down the full embankment. Just look at, there is the crash barrier. They've not been designed to withhold the forces that are imposed on them, and it's really heartening that the CSR is doing research to have the proper barriers. The other element I think that is very important is the issue of transport and spatial planning, land use planning, spatial planning. And what needs to be done is that we should not only design roads, but we should design a road environment, and that road environment must accommodate all the needs of all the road users. We have taxis accumulating in road reserve, many other activities in road reserves. We should provide space on an integrated basis in our designs to deal with the needs of all road users. And it's not only the driving needs, but there are many other needs as well. It is excellent that we have a more scientific and systematic approach. IRAP, it's been demonstrated by Limpopo, it's been demonstrated by Karine in her presentation, but really going forward we must have a more systematic and scientific approach. And then just the last one, and it touches on your question about behavior, and in the end Lemo referred to the carrot and the stick, but certainly enforcement and effective prosecution. That is the third E in road safety. It is the education, engineering, then enforcement, and it needs to be a much more integrated part of our road safety system. With that, Mr. Program Director, I think that the presenters have done well to sketch what's happening, and just Karine also ended with a quote. My quote is, daily improvement is better than delayed perfection. So let's get moving, let's get working and address the issues at hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Herman. Thank you kindly for your summary. I think it was appropriate and it summarized the conversation very well. I also would like to now move to the vote of thanks with Dr. Pine Pina. And at this stage, I'd also like to say thank you for allowing me to be your facilitator for this webinar today. I think we have a lot more to talk about. And let me say goodbye and good evening. Pine?
Thank you very much, Vishal. I have some slides here, but I'm struggling a little bit to get them on, but doesn't matter. I think the first slide is just a vote of thanks to yourself as our facilitator. You've done an excellent job. And then also to our speakers, we've heard all of them. There can be no doubt that all of them are experts in their fields, and they're also very busy people. And we really appreciate that, ladies and gentlemen, that you made time to share in your experience and the important work that you are doing. Share it with us, very much appreciated. Then I'd also like to thank the organizations that involved. An overview has been provided of those organizations, and we are grateful for the support to present an evening like tonight. So thank you very much for that, specifically the Academy of Science and the Academy of Engineering for putting this webinar together. And then in the third place, thank you to the staff of ASSAf, the Academy of Science, and also SAAE. I'm thinking here of Raj, my beer, who is so experienced with the presentation of webinars and has really played a key role in putting this webinar together, and also assisted by staff Henriette Wagner, Letabo Kumalu, who is running the whole show, and Ina Smith, and then also from the Academy of Engineering side, Helene Duffy, for her important contribution. And then, Chairperson, in the last place, a big thank you to everybody who attended, who made the time. There are so many webinars nowadays that we get invited to, but it's exciting to see so many people attending this webinar, and it's because, as has been said, this affects the whole society, affects everybody of us. It affects people of every level of society, and therefore road safety is such an important issue in South Africa and on the wider African continent, as has been pointed out. So a big thank you to everybody that attended, and we hope to follow up webinars addressing specific issues around road safety in future. So watch the space. Thank you, Vishal.
Fine. I'd like to also thank you for your contributions and your support in the organizing of it. I think we may not have acknowledged your contribution, so I'd like to say that as well. Maybe I'm having the last word, but thank you, Pine, for helping and tracking this and making it work, so that we could come to this point where, if anything, at least we have aligned on a topic. We've defragmented the topic to a point where we now start to understand, we appreciate what all the contributors are doing towards road safety. And I think we only got good things to come if we carry on with the work that we are doing. On that note, I'd like to say thank you to everyone, and we should now end the webinar.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.